Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit AITAH, which is an alternative to Am I the A-hole, and it's from user ThrowAwayDaughterIL. Am I the a-hole for going to my ex-daughter-in-law's wedding? I, 56 female, have 2 children, Bob, 30 male, and Alice, 27 female. This is about Bob. He used to be married to my daughter-in-law Ruth, 28 female. That is until 5 years ago. Ruth discovered that Bob was cheating on her while she was pregnant with my granddaughter. I was really disappointed in my son. I taught him better than this. I am a single mom. My husband died years ago and I have remarried only after my kids were in their late teens. I know for sure my late husband wouldn't approve of Bob's cheating. So, long story short, Bob, Ruth and I had a fight. I told him I was very disappointed in him. How could he do this to his own wife? Bob yelled at me and said that I am his mother, not Ruth's, so I should be taking his side. I said no, I will not support his infidelity under any circumstances. My daughter also thinks that her brother is wrong, but she is neutral about it. Bob was mad and left the house. I only saw him at the divorce hearings. I left him messages that if he wants to talk, I would be open to talk, but he didn't respond to my messages. Ruth was an orphan. She didn't have anyone else, so she saw me as her mother. Even after the divorce, she would visit me and bring me some gifts like flowers or cookies. I never stopped her. Ruth also never stopped calling me mom, even after her divorce. I also loved spending time with her and my granddaughter. Then, about 3 years ago, I set up Ruth with my friend Patty's son, John. Patty and I have been close friends since childhood. She knew Ruth really well and loved her too. It was Patty's idea to set her son up with my daughter-in-law. Ruth and John totally hit it off. John was also a good father figure to her daughter. Recently, John and Ruth got married. Ruth wanted me to be there to walk her down the aisle. She told me she walked down the aisle alone when she was married to my son, but now she wants me to walk her down. I was happy about it, so I said yes. The news reached my son. He called me to, again, yell at me that what I am doing is wrong. I shouldn't be talking to Ruth because she and him are divorced. He forbade me to go. I told him he was being irrational. Even if he is divorced, that doesn't mean I have to cut off Ruth. I reminded him that it was his poor choice that led him to this. I didn't listen to my son and went to the wedding anyways. My son got the news and was pissed. He kept cursing at me that I am a deadbeat mom who left her own son for a floozy. He called me a hypocrite that I didn't go to his wedding, he married his mistress, but was gallivanting at Ruth's wedding. My husband is with me, but he says my son has a point, but my daughter says otherwise. Was I wrong to go to her wedding? OP, of course not. You were not the a-hole and you were not wrong to go to your ex-daughter-in-law's wedding. You were absolutely right when you told your idiot son that just because he is divorced, that doesn't mean you have to cut that relationship off. And I have to say, it is kinda sad that considering that you sound like a pretty logical and sound person, your son behaves like an absolute moron. He forbade you? That one made me laugh a little bit. He is an idiot, but I know that regardless of that, you still love him. OP, I think the best thing that you can do is just go like low contact for a while. And after some time, maybe he'll gain some perspective and you can approach him again. But until then, don't stress yourself. So yeah, OP, in summary, no, you're not the a-hole. Keep enjoying those visits with your granddaughter and give your son some time to cool off. And what do you guys think about this whole situation? What is your judgment? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Dove Chocolate Bar says, your son ruined your granddaughter's family because he wanted to have sex. He no longer has any leg to stand on for anything. I'm really glad you see the situation for what it is and that you and Ruth have each other, not the a-hole. And OP responds, as a mother, it was a hard choice for me. I tried to be there for him, but his mistress was not a good person. She was a mutual friend of Ruth and my son. She knew that he was married, still she pursued him. To me, that's not a quality woman. My soul couldn't just bring me to forget the fact that he was so cruel to Ruth when she was vulnerable. Why is Toby in jail? Toby's in jail? Says, not the a-hole. I can understand how not picking your child's side would make you feel like you did the wrong thing. Your son sounds like a spoiled brat who is missing out on his child's life. Be there for your granddaughter and her mother. Smiley face. Also, put some distance between you and your son until he stops verbally abusing you. You're doing the right thing. Your son doesn't want to feel like he's in the wrong and will not change till he can accept that truth about himself and want to change. Good luck, OP. And OP responds, a parent's job is to teach their kids the right thing. If I supported his cheating, that would be me enabling him, which I don't want to. For now, I am putting some distance. The last time I had any contact, I messaged him, you should calm down first and then talk to me. I cannot have a conversation with you if you're acting like a child. Technical Pumpkin 65 says, you did the right thing, but your son is too selfish to understand how a failure he has been, and the fact he married his mistress and continues insulting the mother of his child proves it. You have principles and values. Unfortunately, too many people decide to act as if nothing happens, but you did not, and good for you. Remind him that his mistress, with a ring or not, will never be accepted, and you refuse to be there until he decides to wake up and be the man and father he is supposed to be. And OP responds, he only pays child support. I have hardly seen him spending time. I hear Ruth complain about him always making excuses. He only got more involved when my granddaughter was becoming close to John. I love my son, but I just wish he would have some decency. Additional information from OP's comments. Just to be very clear, if Ruth cheated, I would 100% be on my son's side. I would have cut off contact with her. Regardless, he went no contact with me because I was on Ruth's side. But after the divorce, he contacted me that he is getting married to his mistress. I was not happy about it. He ruined his whole family just for this homewrecker. I do think my son is more to blame for this. He tried to convince me to give his mistress a chance. I was weak. After all, I am his mother. So I caved and met them at a restaurant. I just can't stand her because she knew that my son was married and yet they continued the affair. I also had this bad gut feeling about her. She seems really rude to me. She even made odd comments that she was saving my son from a potentially bad marriage and that I should be happy. That was just it for me. I told my son I don't want to be at his wedding. He made his choices and I am making mine, and I choose not to be a part of his bad decisions. Then after that, I had little contact with him. He would visit his daughter once in a while, but most of the time he was absent. My late husband was a man of principles and integrity. If he was alive, he would be very disappointed in him, and I don't think my now husband has a part in it. He was very disappointed in Bob too. I am also baffled by it. Where did I go wrong? I always tried my best to teach my kids my late husband's principles. I never made him feel like an outsider and never enabled him on anything. Still a bit shaking at how he turned out. Okay, well, the community agrees that OP is not the a-hole and that the son is an idiot, and OP in her context ended up asking herself some questions. Where did she go wrong? And she actually makes a post about it called Where Did I Go Wrong in another subreddit. In this post, she does a deep dive on the background to this whole situation. Now, if you're not interested in this, of course, you can use the timestamps to skip straight on to the first update. And now we continue, but before that, here's another one of my playlists for you to enjoy after this video. Now let's continue with a deep dive. I, 56 female, have a son, Bob, 30 male. Along with him, I have a daughter, 27 female. My husband died when my daughter was only 5 years old. The death of their father came as a shock to Bob. I tried my best to comfort him. I took him to therapists and trauma experts. They all said he is a good boy and very well behaved. The only father figure Bob had was his uncle, my brother. He was a nice man as well, a man with discipline. Ever since my kids were little, I tried my best to be a good parent. I stopped dating for a long time so that I could focus on my kids. I gave them important lessons in life. I even told them about their dad. My late husband was a man of dignity and morals. He is the type of person who wouldn't sacrifice his morals to please people around him. I always tried to be both parents, but I guess I wasn't enough. Anyway, my son started dating my daughter-in-law Ruth when he was 20. They met at a restaurant where Ruth was a part-time worker. I liked Ruth. She was well-mannered and had a good heart. I told my son he picked the right woman for him. Bob was head over heels for her. They got married 2 years after dating. Ruth finished her degree early and got a job as a teacher at the age of 22. I noticed that my son didn't like it. He would complain about Ruth's odd hours, which I think was irrational because she was a kindergarten teacher. I explained to my son that Ruth has her own life outside his own. I told him if he had concerns about her time, he should take it up with her. He said he understood. Things were really calm for a year. A year later, they started having another fight. Ruth said that she wanted to pursue her master's. She is still young and wanted to do something meaningful with her degree. Honestly, I was in support. Ruth was a prodigy, but my son objected. He thought that it was a bad idea and that it would cause trouble. Now, I don't like to mix in their lives. I tried to stay away from their conflict, that is, until one day Ruth came to me and said Bob threatened to leave her if she ever tried to pursue a master's degree. I did give my son an earful, and honestly, I took it as an offense because I worked jobs to support my family. I worked hard, and now I have my own business. It is just so disappointing to me that my son had such backward thinking. A few weeks later, Ruth came to me and said she was pregnant. She forgot all about her master's. I tried to be there for her as much as possible. Later, Ruth discovered my son was cheating on her with a mutual friend of theirs. Ruth was devastated. I called a family meeting. There Ruth was, crying, and told Bob how could he do this to her. Bob said things like Ruth doesn't love him, she doesn't make him feel special, her friend always fulfills his needs and understands him better. He realized he was wasting his 20s by playing family with a woman who always fights him. I asked what were the fights and what did Ruth do to make him so angry. He said, "Her whole existence bothers me. She cares more about her higher education than me. If she was a good wife, she would be a housewife rather than going out." I reminded him that I also had higher education. He said that's different. They argued a lot. My son just called her a floozy and a bitch the whole time. Moreover, he is an absent father to his own daughter. He pays child support but barely makes time for his daughter. He went low contact when I stood my ground and told him I will not support his infidelity at any cost. I met his mistress because he insisted I gave her a chance and told me that after meeting her I would change my mind about Ruth. But he was wrong. His mistress was not a nice person. My gut was telling me she was not good-hearted either. She made an odd comment that she was saving my son from a potentially bad marriage and I should be happy for him. I told him I will not be at his wedding if he marries the woman who wrecked his home. I know my son is more to blame, but she knew Ruth and Bob. She knew they were married. Recently, Ruth got married to John, my friend's son. Ruth asked me to walk her down the aisle. It reached my son's ears and he called me all sorts of vile names. He forbade me to go to her wedding and called me a hypocrite because I didn't come to his wedding, but I was going to Ruth's. I just told him to calm down and talk to me when he's not acting like a baby. I just feel like a failure, like I failed my late husband too. My late husband would be disappointed in my son as well. I don't know where I went wrong. I tried my best to provide. Maybe not having a father made him like this. I sometimes now regret having him as my son. But I still love him. But I don't love the man he turned out to be. I guess being a single mom was a curse after all. Well, OP, from everything you've told us, it doesn't sound like you did anything wrong. He even had some sort of a father figure in your brother. Unfortunately, maybe he had some other influences that you were just not privy to. Regardless, he is his own man and he needs to live with the consequences of his actions. Anyways, now that we've got a full knowledge of the whole background, it's time to move on with the update to see what happened next. First of all, thank you for your comments. Although I got some hate comments calling me a bad mom and a failure, it was nice to see people support me. It gave me the strength to know I was not making a bad decision. So now on to the update. My son emailed me and said he wants to talk to me. I thought I should have a long conversation with him, but I made some ground rules. He is not allowed to criticize or call anyone any names like the last time and will be civil when I am talking. He agreed. He came to my house yesterday at noon. My husband was off to work and my daughter was in her room. He sat down and there were moments of awkward silence. He asked me how I was and we had small talk. I asked him about his wife and that's when he started to cry. Not ugly crying, just a few tears. I can tell he was not doing well. I sat beside him and told him he can tell me. He tells me everything. He tells me that he is sorry for how he reacted. He understands why I might be ashamed of him. He later tells me his marriage is not going well, that his wife is no way near as good as Ruth was. Ruth took care of all of his needs and loved him, yet he treated Ruth like trash. He is constantly fighting with his new wife. He knew he effed up a lot. He learned that the last time he visited his daughter and she kept referring to John as her dad. Bob tried to make her say the word dad and she screamed at him by saying, "You're not my dad." He saw how happy Ruth was with another man and he realized what he had lost. I asked him, would you have missed Ruth if your wife did those same things for you as Ruth did? He was silent. I further told him it seems to me that he only kept Ruth in his life because he used her to fulfill his needs. I explained to him about my relationship with his father. We were with each other not because I fulfilled his needs. We were with each other because we loved each other. And that love didn't stop when one person was the most vulnerable and weak. But he, my son, left Ruth when she was vulnerable and needed him the most. His needs were fulfilled when Ruth was just a housewife working a small job. But as soon as she has no need, he discarded her. It really hit him hard as he was sobbing. He said that he knows he was a crappy person, but he was manipulated by that bitch. He said that about his wife. To be honest, I lost my cool and yelled. He should stop blaming other people for his mistake. It was his decision to cheat. It was his decision to leave Ruth. It was his decision to abandon his daughter. He cannot run away from his responsibilities and wonder why nobody is taking his side. Moreover, he hasn't learned anything from his mistakes because he is still calling his wife vile names. This is the same girl who claimed is better than Ruth. He had a choice not to cheat. He could have pushed her away when she tried to seduce him, but he didn't because in his mind, he made this fantasy that Ruth doesn't care about him because all she ever wanted was to complete her education. I raised him better than this. He is not just insulting my upbringing, he is also insulting his own father, and he will only see suffering in his life unless he takes full accountability for his actions. He told me he knows I was disappointed in him and he wants to make things right. He is trapped in a bad marriage because God is punishing him for how he treated his daughter and ex-wife. I told him if he wants to be a good man, he should start by apologizing to Ruth and become cordial with his daughter. I also gave him a reality check that his daughter already sees John as her dad, so I have doubts she would start calling him dad anytime soon, but he should at least try. I told him to apologize to his sister as well. If he is really miserable in his marriage, he should get a divorce or try counseling. Whatever decision he makes, I will support him, but that does not mean I will forgive his wife because she has also done Ruth wrong. Unless she makes an apology to Ruth, I don't think I can see her as a decent person. Lastly, I told him that even though I am very disappointed in him, I still love him. I will always guide him to what is right. He will always be my son, but this is his chance to be a better man. I believe in second chances. This time, I hope he cleans up his act. I am proud of him that he acknowledges his wrongdoings. Okay, well, things seem to be looking up. At least it seems like the son is starting to understand that he effed up big time. Now, this whole thing has made OP think a lot about her late husband. So in a separate post, she shared with us how she's feeling regarding all of this. Now, if you would like to skip this and go straight to the final update, again, you can use the timestamps. If not, let's go check out what OP was feeling at this time. And OP titled this post, "I feel like I'm cheating on my now husband with my dead husband." It's been 22 years since my husband died in an accident. I remember his last moments. He was doing fine, he was too weak to speak, but still managed to say that he loves me and he loves his kids. Me and my late husband have this thing where we would write a letter to each other once a year and it has to be handwritten. In his last letter, he mentioned death. He said if death comes, then I should remember that he loves me with all his heart and he doesn't have any regrets. I guess he somehow knew this would be his last letter. I still have that letter. I still have a place for him in my heart. He was not just my husband, he is also the father of my kids. How can I forget him just like that? I didn't date for a long time. Mainly because I focused on raising my 2 kids, but also because I couldn't find anyone even comparable to my husband. I met my now husband when my daughter was 15. My son was also 18 and in college. He is sweet, kind, gentle, and funny. He always has this positive outlook on life. After a long time, I had this butterfly in my stomach kind of feeling. I fell in love with him. We got married after dating 4 years. My husband is also a widower. He also has kids who are a little older than my kids and left the nest early. I have built a second home with my husband. I am happy. I love this man and I want nothing more than to enjoy his company as much as I can. But lately, I have been going through some personal stuff with my son. It made me miss my late husband even more. His stuff is still in my basement. I couldn't have the heart to throw it all out. I still have his camera, his pocket watch, the Rubik's Cube he liked to solve, and his books, and most importantly, his letters. I miss him so much, but sometimes I feel like I am doing unfair to my husband. He is such a good man. I feel like I am cheating on him. I know it is not possible, but still I try my best to not think about him. But I do. It's hard not to. Am I cheating? Is this normal? I don't want to keep my husband in the dark. I care about him. I respect him. He doesn't deserve a wife who cheats. OP, I have no idea what it is to live the life that you've lived, but I don't think that you're cheating, and I would think that this is normal because your marriage did not end because somebody fell out of love or somebody cheated and they were sour and bad feelings. Your marriage ended abruptly. Your love didn't. And I would believe, I could be wrong, but I would believe that many widowers feel the same way. And if you do feel bad about this, if somebody could understand you, I would think would be your now husband because he is a widower too. Maybe just sit down and talk to him about how you're feeling. Anyways, that was a glimpse at OP's mental state at that time. Now, a month later, we have the final update to this whole story, so let's finish the video with that. Hello folks, thanks for showing me a lot of love and support. I am really overwhelmed by it. It has been a month since my last post. Things are fine now. I will be giving updates from r/marriage post too. Well, first of all, my daughter moved out of my house. She was living with us along with her fiance to save money to buy their own place. I am happy for her. The house just feels empty without her, but I will get over it. About my post on the marriage subreddit, I talked to my husband about my feelings towards my late husband. He was surprisingly fine. He told me he understands that I miss him. Sometimes he misses his dead wife too. He still keeps a picture of her with him. I don't mind it. He further told me that the pain we both went through is something no one would understand and he doesn't feel like I am betraying him by missing my dead husband. He was my family and it is normal to miss family. I am glad I had this talk with him. I fell in love with him even more. Ruth and John are doing fine. She announced that they are expecting a child together and Ruth asked me to be the godmother. I am really overwhelmed and happy for them, though I still don't know whether I should be your kid's godmother or not. Now on to my son. He has decided to separate from his wife. I guess his marriage has problems and he is trying to sort it out on his own. He is in therapy. I support him in his journey. Things between my granddaughter and him are still a bit sour, but I am helping as a middleman. He talked to Ruth about the change in custody, but she said no, because given how he has treated her in the past couple of years, she doesn't trust him. I know Bob is sad, but I assured him he shouldn't give up now. He should still fulfill his duty as a dad. He meets my granddaughter at my house. Right now, they are playing snakes and ladders in my living room. My son has been really trying to be a better version of himself and I support that. I hope in the future things will improve for him. Thank you so much for helping a mother out here. I know if I ever have any issues I cannot solve, I can always count on the kind people of Reddit. Well, OP, I'm gonna count this as a happy update. Ruth and John are expecting a baby and that's great news, and your son, Bob, finally understood that he's a screw-up and he's gonna fix things. Or at least, he's gonna try. It's a good thing that you support him on his journey. Hopefully, he gets there. So at this point, here's wishing you all the best in the future, OP. Thank you so much for sharing this whole story with us. Take care. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out, so here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.